Welcome back to our series Hard Math with Kevin. I'm here with our Chief Analytics Officer, Kevin Nabe, who is going to follow up on our previous episode where he was discussing why it's important to do a driver analysis with a little bit further analysis here of the example we gave, the rankings that we used, and then how he brought those into different factors. So I'll turn it over to you, Kevin.
Awesome. Thanks, Drew. So in the first episode, we took a look at overall experience, where most of the respondents were in fact satisfied with it. There were a few people that weren't, and so the whole point of this analysis is to understand what may separate out those who are slightly or strongly satisfied with who might be strongly or slightly dissatisfied. So then we went to also discussed the attribute ratings of breadth of system, cleanliness, fair, staff, and timeliness. We mentioned last time that it almost appeared that cleanliness and timeliness looked very similarly rated, as well as breadth of system and staff, with fair being the attribute that most people were strongly or slightly satisfied with by far. However, we can't.
So if I'm looking at this, Kevin, I'm going to say, wow, fair is the thing that we're doing the best at. Great, nothing we need to think about there. Let's focus on some of the other areas. But you would say that that's probably an incorrect reading of the information at this point, correct?
Yeah, it's a potentially misleading interpretation. That is correct. And so the takeaways from slide 3 thus far are, fairs are nothing we need to worry about because they're doing awesome. They're the ones that are driving this high satisfaction because those are the most highly rated. We see that cleanliness and timeliness are about middle of the road rated. They're related to each other. And breadth of system and staff are the lowest, and so that's where we need to focus. And so if you were to stop here, you would be making some potential mistakes, and we'll go through exactly why that might be the case. So when people answer surveys, as you know, and they rate things 1 to 5, there tends to be some correlation amongst those kinds of ratings. And so what starts to happen is through how respondents answer a survey, they indicate to you implicitly or latently how they view these attributes in a smaller subset of groups. And so there's an analysis called factor analysis. It's also called principal components that tends to boil down the attributes from 5 to potentially 2 or 3. And so what we're going to go through now is the group of attributes. And so what it says is, all right, what are the 2 most or 3 most correlated attributes together? And that happens to be on this slide, breadth of system and timeliness, which show a pretty strong correlation. And so I'm going to call that group system. The next correlation, strongest correlation, after you account for breadth of system and timeliness, is staff and cleanliness. So when respondents rated staff highly, they tended to also rate cleanliness highly as well. I'm going to call that support services just for fun. And then lastly, fairs is kind of its own deal, where it wasn't as related to the other 4 attributes as the 4 attributes were related to each other. At this point, I'll stop because I'm going to go back to the previous slide and basically ask a question. So the factor analysis shows that breadth of system and timeliness are related, but we see on this slide that these bars look quite a bit different, where timeliness was rated absolutely higher than breadth of system. So Drew, what's the potential takeaway knowing that there's some correlations between some of these attributes that aren't necessarily indicated here on the summary of attribute ratings?
I have no idea, Kevin. No, I mean, I guess I would look at that and say, wow, these 2 things, while they don't, people don't appear to be rating them the same way, obviously there are things that we can do, while if we work on certain things within these areas, there's probably going to be an effect on another area as well.
That's correct. That's correct. So what we also see is that even though we see that cleanliness and timeliness were rated highly, those are the second highest, they aren't as related as timeliness and breadth of system. And so by only taking a look at the attribute ratings themselves and presuming that these are related, we're actually making a big mistake. These groups of attributes, or the factor analysis, basically demonstrate that things move in tandem for various reasons, whether whether people think of things in certain ways, such as what are the system level variables in the survey, what are the support and services variables in the survey, etc. And so therefore, those are where we need to focus on figuring out what's really driving overall experience. But accounting for these correlations is important, so you don't make the mistake of presuming relationships amongst variables that aren't there.
That's great. And so we'll stop there, but next episode, we're going to go into the actual takeaways. So Kevin will walk us through the regression he did on this factor analysis and show us truly what is driving the results here. So yeah, thank you very much, Kevin. That's great, and look forward to the next episode.
Yeah, thanks, Drew.